Hi, this is Adam Eliel Berkowitz from Breaking Israel News. I'm here for a talk with Yuval Ovadia. And to be honest, I'm doing it not just for an interview, I'm doing it for myself because we're all in this together. It's a global pandemic. It's something I've never seen in my lifetime. And the worst part about it is there's no information out there or bad information. And the amazing thing is, Yuval has been studying Nibiru, as well as other things having to do with what we call Acharit Yamim, the end of the days, from a Jewish perspective. And I very much rely on his opinion in these things. I've been interviewing him for a couple years now, and the more we talk, the more I realize that he doesn't sound like anyone else, and he makes more sense as things open up. So was it Thursday night? He called me. He told me something that shocked me, that floored me. It was one of the most concerning things I've ever heard, which was that Netanyahu announced that the cabinet meetings would now be held in a bunker. This bunker was built a little over 10 years ago outside of Jerusalem. It has a direct underground road that goes through. You can drive two trucks through. The tunnels go straight from the government buildings to this bunker. And the whole point of the bunker was that they could continue to operate the government under any kind of threat. And they actually have used it before. The bunker cost $240 million. It contains command centers, living quarters, and it was used in 2011 when there was a threat that Iran would be shooting nuclear missiles at Israel, and they were shooting missiles. Syria was shooting missiles into the Golan from Iran, and the missiles were from Iran. Anytime you hear about any missiles from hitting Israel, they're coming from Iran, the missiles originally. So this was opened up in 2011, and they ran the cabinet meetings there. So Netanyahu said that they're now going to be running all the cabinet meetings from inside this bunker. I don't know if the politicians are actually going to be living in the bunker. But what shocked me is that basically what they're saying is that the threat level of the coronavirus is on the level of a nuclear war. And not just any nuclear war, a world-threatening nuclear war. So therefore, the government has to be in a bunker. Americans should know, I'm sure you're aware, that America also has the same kind of bunker. It used to be in a place called Greenbrier in Virginia, a huge luxury hotel, and they had an underground hardened complex for the entire government. The Congress could meet. It was a huge complex, and it's now public knowledge. So the thing that shocked me is the government is getting ready for the end of days. That's kind of scary. So first of all, Yuval, what do you make of that? What Yuval? What do you? How do you
First of all,
understand that?
all right. The things I want to tell you and the viewers is based on few things: on my knowledge, on my research, and also on information, spiritual information. I've never used this before, but lately I've been in contact with people with spiritual abilities, like the autistic kids, that I have a direct contact with them, and also with the Mekubalim, which I'm not going to be able to mention their names. So what I'm going to be speaking is made of all of this together, okay?
Mekubalim
Just for you to understand.
Mekubalim are mystics, and there are people who are recognized And they're actually very, very low profile. Not everyone merits knowing who
Yeah.
these people are.
Yeah, and they sometimes they have contact with the upper world, you know, being given messages, and also the autistic kids, if you've heard about them.
I've
So
written about them.
if you if you remember, I've spoke to you many times about the Nibiru, and many times I've told you that everything that we see, let's say natural disasters, let's say about more and more meteors and asteroids coming towards us, and like earthquakes, volcanoes, all those things, it has a direct connection to the Nibiru approaching Earth. You remember we spoke about that many times, right?
To be really
Now,
honest, the first time you said that to me, I was like, I don't know about this Yuval Ovadia guy. But and that was a couple years ago, and more, I'm seeing that you've got it right. And you were saying NASA is kind of like blowing smoke so that people don't know what's going on. I'm like, well, NASA, what are you talking? And I've been watching more and more. First, they're like, oh, we don't have to worry about asteroids, but we're going to set up an organization that tracks them. And we're going to do this experiment about how to stop an asteroid in its tracks. And there was a whole thing with Yellowstone. It blew my mind. Yellowstone, a couple years ago, had these, what they called swarms of earthquakes, which were small earthquakes, but thousands of them. And all the experts were like, oh, there's nothing to worry about. That's normal. And then you look at it, you realize it's not normal. And they had this plan to inject steam into the magma underneath Yellowstone. And the thing that people don't realize is, right, Yellowstone is beautiful.
it's crap.
But right, Yellowstone is actually a supervolcano. It's the #1 worry spot, the place we got to be worried about so far as volcanoes on the planet. If Yellowstone goes, forget about it. Forget about it. They
2/3 of America is in danger.
2/3 of
Yellowstone goes, 2/3 of America and all over the world, because it's going to be covering the sun. The whole world is going to get into an ice age.
And NASA
of course, it's just one of them.
NASA was going to shoot steam into it because there was nothing to worry about. I'm like, whoa!
Yeah.
So
crap.
So I've been listening to Yuval for a couple of years, and I don't like conspiracy theories. But the more I listen to him, the more I realize, something. At some point, you got to ask, hey.
I tell you what, my friend, I also don't like conspiracies. And before I speak about something, I make a very, very deep research. That's the type of a person I am, Before I become a Baal Teshuva, religious, I was complete secular. I mean, I was a Hollywood movie star in Manhattan. I was party man. So I'm not going to go and change myself, become religious just because of rumors of, of all kind of mystic things. No, I've made a research. Everything I do in my life, I like to check things and make like all the way deep inside. The same thing with the Nibiru and everything I'm talking about. Now, when I started talking about the Nibiru, about let's say 4 or 5 years ago, and you can see it on YouTube all over. People have been quoting me, and we made beautiful videos with hundreds of thousands of viewers. I also know people who took it to their websites, and they tell me they have like millions of viewers. Doesn't matter. Anyway, we spoke back
I just want to throw in, you mentioned something. You just mentioned something. Whenever I write about Yuval Ovadia, whenever I write about his theories, the next day, these major news services like the Express, especially in the UK for some reason, they all start quoting my articles. And so I have to be really careful I get it right with Yuval, because he says some very, very powerful things. So I want to make sure I get it right all the time. But he's not kidding.
That's why I told you that right now
They do quote him all over the world. It's crazy.
So that's why I've suggested that this time we're going to do it live and we're going to be speaking out, so you're not going to have to get into, like in a situation that you don't know if you did say the right thing. So I'm going to say everything up front, and as I said before, I'm going to be tonight, first time ever, backed up not only with information, but also with some spiritual sources, like special messages from the upper world. I mean, I never count on those, but it's just as a backup, I count on what I see, on the evidence and the holy scriptures that we have. But those things, if it backs me up, then why not? You know what I'm saying? So when I spoke about the Nibiru back then, a few years ago, we always knew that this Nibiru, I just repeat it for the new viewers, it's not just a planet. It's a whole mini solar system. It's like a sun, a hot star, revolved by 7 other planets or moons, whatever you want to call it. So it's a mini solar system entering our solar system and approaching Earth. It's never going to hit Earth, God forbid, but it's going to be very close to Earth.
That's
at a certain time it's going to come.
That's a very, very important point. A lot of the news services actually misquoted me, quoting Yuval. He's not talking about, God forbid, the destruction of the world. Nibiru is definitely going to be a wake-up call. It's going to be a wake-up call. It's going to be a big shaking up, but we're not talking about the destruction of the world. And this is based on Bible sources.
No.
By the way, Yuval is an expert in the Jewish sources, which is not a simple thing. We're talking about a lot of sources, Hebrew, Aramaic, but the Zohar, but it's also based on the Star of Jacob. When the Torah talks about it, we're talking about the Star of Jacob, which is what Bilam spoke about, which the Rambam Maimonides says is the herald of the Messiah, which is the Star of Jacob. So what he's talking about, exactly. Nibiru, is actually a more complete picture of the Star of Jacob, and we're using the term Nibiru, but we're talking about the Star of Jacob. I'm sorry, please go on. So what is Nibiru? What is Nibiru going to look like?
Exactly. It based on what Bilam says. I'll quote exact sentence. Derach kochav miYaakov v'shevet miYisrael. So it has, additional to the 7 moons revolving it, it has a long tail. That's why Shevet miYisrael, it's like a Shavit. Shavit has it's like a comet in a way. It has a long tail made of millions of meteors and asteroids that comes, that were pulled by this star, with its magnetic force. So when we see it coming, and I've been videotaped it a few times. I've sent you a video. Did you see it? A video or photos? You see a star and a long, long, long tail of meteors behind it. By the way, in the ancient mythologies, which it's been visited our world a few times in the past, they call it, one of the names, it has many names, like Baal HaKnafayim, like the Lord of the Wings. Well, it has 2 wings, like 2 tails. 2 tails of meteors behind it. Anyway, when it comes closer, the closer it comes to us, according to scientists which have been talking about it, not everybody likes to talk about it, because NASA has been put hashtaka. How do you call it in English? Hashtaka.
It's censorship. They don't want people. Yeah,
Silence.
They subdue it. They subdue it.
They don't want people to talk about it. They found about it about 30, 35 years ago. There've been a few articles in the news. I have everything in the New York Times that's a new planet has been found, and then they checked it with their special telescopes, and they realized this one is coming towards us, and it's going to do some damage. They don't know what kind of damage, but some will be. So therefore, they decided to 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 stamp it as a conspiracy because they don't want people to think about it. Why? The question is why. First of all, they didn't want the world to be into. Hello?
Yeah, yeah.
They didn't want the world to be into panic, getting into panic. They wanted business to go business as usual. And the second thing, they had a plan to prepare for that. Because not only the closer it gets to us, there are going to be more and more natural disasters, which you can see if you go and check on the scales, on the graphs, the last 20 years, more and more and more earthquakes, volcanoes, storms, and the pole is shifting slowly. The pole, the last 10, 20 years has been shifted in like 20 degrees. I don't know if you're aware of that, but these are facts. You can go and check.
The magnetic poles have shifted. The magnetic poles have shifted.
Yeah. And it affects the environment, definitely. Now, at a certain point, let's say at the deadline, this Nibiru, I call it Nibiru, they call it Nemesis, they call it many different names. So it's supposed to come towards the sun and make a turn around the sun. When it comes to the sun will pull it towards it because the sun is much stronger. It's much bigger than it. And then it's going to go around the sun and go back to eternity, to where it came from. It comes towards the sun and going to make a flip. All right? So, but when it comes to the closer point, of the sun, it's going to be the closest to us, maybe 10 or 20 million kilometers. Maybe 10, 20, 30 million. If you don't know, the distance between us to the sun is 150 million kilometers. So it's going to be somehow between the sun to us. And it's going to be so close that it's going to shift the poles completely, 180 degrees. That will cause a lot of tsunami. Many pieces of land will be covered completely with water. By the way, the Zohar says it's exactly in the flood. In the flood, the Gemara, Talmud, the Talmud Brachot, page Tractate Brachot, page Nunchet, 58, Nunchet. It says that how did the flood happen? God, the Almighty, always liked to use the nature. I mean, he could say, let there be a flood, but he likes to stay within the nature that he himself created. So he took 2 stars from Pelagius and brought them around us somehow. That's how the flood was caused. And there was a flip in the magnetic pole. So it's going to be a flip again. In other words, it's going to be like a full circle. Everything will go back to where it was before, as far as magnetic pole, and other things as well. Anyway, this is not the main thing they're afraid of. The main thing they're afraid of,
Pardon me.
There are going to be some more and more natural disaster as we see. They're happening. You can't ignore them. I mean, the last year America said they spends, I think, over $300 billion in the year's natural disasters last year, and every year it's getting worse and worse. And it's all over the world, all over the world. Mainly, when I followed the natural disasters, mainly in America, South and North, in Europe also, and in Africa and Asia. In the Middle East, I don't see so many. You see also, but it's not as much as over there. Anyway, what they're afraid of mostly, and what I'm telling you is also based on those Kabbalistic people and the autistic kids, and on the information that I have in my hand. They are mostly afraid of the tail of this Nibiru, the tail full of meteors and asteroids. Why? If you check the news, first of all, wait, hold on. When the Nibiru makes the turn around the sun, as I told you before, makes the turn, on a certain point, Earth will go into his tail full of meteors, asteroids. That means we are all going to be under rain of rocks, of meteors, asteroids. Nobody knows where it's going to hit. It's going to be like Tzuk Eitan in Israel, but all over the world. That's how it's supposed to be. How long we're going to be in its tail, I don't know. It could be a few minutes or a few hours. It's not going to be a few days, but these few minutes or hours, it's going to make the world completely different than what it was before that.
I want to point out,
Now,
if I can, just a minute. Yuval says some very powerful things, and you say, "Oh, no way, no way." But what's crazy is how many of these things have already happened, and people say, "No big deal." So, for example, I don't know how many people know about this, but in 2013, there was a small asteroid. It was only 60 feet across, one asteroid, and it exploded. It entered the atmosphere and exploded over Chelyabinsk, Russia. And it gave off a small asteroid, 60 feet across. It was traveling at 40,000 miles per hour. So when it entered the atmosphere, it exploded with about 30 times as much energy as the atomic bomb in Hiroshima. And because it was so high up, it didn't cause quite as much damage. But about 1,500 people were injured. No one was killed, mostly from shattering glass, from the shockwave. 7,200 buildings were damaged. There was also another place in Russia, I can't remember the name right now, but it was in Siberia, and they're not really sure, but it exploded an entire forest. There was a crater, the trees were exploded.
It's the whole forest.
Right. Yeah. And we're talking about the region the size of a state. And these are things that we know that happen. And it's all just like
but lately,
I want to say one more thing. You once told me, well, Nibiru could be coming from the other side of the sun, from an area of the sky that we can't see. And when you said that to me, I'm like, come on, we're talking about NASA. They have all the science. And then, oh, by the way, these explosions in Russia, zero warning. The NASA did not see it coming. It just hit, and they're like, oops, we didn't see that coming. And I read about another asteroid that exploded unexpectedly, and they said, well, it was coming directly from the sun, so we couldn't see it. And I'm like, that's a big part of the sky that you can't see. And I heard exactly the same thing from Yuval, who said they can't see all the sky, and Nibiru could be coming, and they wouldn't necessarily see it. And people would say, oh, of course NASA would see it. No, I'm telling you that I heard it from you, and then I read it in the newspaper. I was like, what are you talking about? NASA did not see it. And that seemed crazy to me. I'm sorry, I just had to say that. Okay, go on, Yuval. Go on.
Now, let me tell you something about NASA. The thing is, NASA, now everybody knows, we call it never a straight answer. NASA is just an organization that belongs to the American government. It's not an independent organization. Now, everything that belongs to the government, they don't always going to tell you the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Why? Because they have a special interests. Something, sometimes something is high classified. Sometimes it doesn't serve the purposes of the government. Like, for example, the nuclear in Israel, the nuclear in Dimona. Up until today, if you ask the official, they tell you, no, there's no nuclear.
Right.
While everybody knows there's a nuclear plant in Dimona. But the governments don't always say the truth. That's in Leshon Me'ata. Usually they only lie. Mostly they lie to the people. So you cannot count on NASA as you cannot count on the government. It's not an independent organization. They have restrictions from the government, what to tell, what not to tell. And sometimes they change information according to the agenda of the government. There's nothing you can do about it. So you have to get it into your, because I tell you why I'm emphasizing this, because we, in the last 30, 40, 50 years, we have been told that NASA is everything. According to science, it's like Moshe Rabbeinu of science.
Yeah.
All the science museums, all the science studies, all the science universities, they all go by NASA. If you give an information which is, it's regardless NASA, no, it's a conspiracy. How come? Because they brainwashed us to believe that NASA is the halacha leMoshe Sinai in matter of science, which is not. It's a mental organization. They have the budget from the government. They must follow the agenda of the government. And everybody knows the government not always say the truth. Actually, many times they lie to the people according to their own interests. Maybe it's a security interest, like a defense interest, or culture, kalkala, like economy interests. You never know.
And
But the
Yuval,
bottom of the line, you can never count on them.
Yuval, you said something that
Understand?
you said something that really impressed me when the story about the bunker came up. Yuval said to me, okay, a bunker is good against nuclear war. What does it do against the coronavirus? They'd be better off going to a room in Jerusalem, closing it off, and they're right there, and they don't have to move away, and they can stay there, and they can...
Not a room, take a penthouse.
Take a
huge penthouse up in the sky, free air, clean, nice. Actually, when you have a virus around, you need to be in an open place, not inside a closed place.
Exactly.
And
so all of a sudden,
let me get it.
Why a bunker? Why a bunker? What is a bunker? And that's where I was like, that doesn't make sense. So why are they doing it? So
let me get to that.
Okay.
Be patient. Give me a few minutes and I'll get to that. Now, the main thing they consider is the asteroids coming from the Nibiru, and the last few years, more and more there are hits on the ground. Actually, NASA admitted last year, you can go and check, that every day hundreds of meteors hitting the ground in America, every day. It's nothing that happened before. Omnam, I mean, they're small, you don't hear about big damages, but you never know. Maybe they hide things sometimes. I know from my spiritual sources that many of the fire outbreaks, like in Africa and in Brazil, they've been caused by hitting by meteors. But the official sources hiding this, they said it's the pollution, the global warming, which is bullshit. Okay? You understand? That's another scam they invented in order to cover up the Nibiru, the coming of the Nibiru, the global warming. So anyway, I'm not going to get into the issue. That's another whole issue, which I have a lot of proof it's a scam. Now everybody knows. Now many people know.
Yeah, you don't have.
But anyway, so they know the closer the Nibiru will come with its tail, long tail of meteors, they're going to be more and more like huge hits, and nobody knows when it's going to hit until the final deadline. As I told you, the Nibiru makes a turn around the sun and Earth is going into its tail. That's going to be like Tzuk Etan. How you say in Hebrew the Tzuk Etan? What we have in Tzuk Etan?
It was the Israeli incursion into Gaza when we were getting hit by thousands and thousands of rockets.
The last.
Yeah. So I forget what
Solid rock.
was.
Solid rock. The solid rock. The solid rock event that we had in Israel, like tens of thousands of rockets all over. That's what it's going to be all over the world, but not with rockets, but with meteors and asteroids. And each hit would be like worth of 10 or 20 atom bombs. God forbid, chas v'shalom.
Yeah, this was
I said in my lectures.
This was a tiny rock, and it was 30 times the size of Hiroshima.
That's it.
People don't enjoy it. It's coming at us.
Imagine what
hour, so it's going to make a huge explosion.
That's it. Now imagine it gets closer. When it's coming from closer distance, fast distance, it's much more dangerous. Now, 30 years ago, they started all the main governments in the world to build up these bunkers, like huge bunkers. In America alone, there are over 100 bunkers. You can check on YouTube. It's all been covered up. Videotapes, many of them. They are in Denver, Colorado. They have all over. It's usually in the mountains. And they made it like 100 meters deep inside the ground, cover up with iron, strong iron, and it's been they have like train railroads inside the ground, leading from one bunker to another. Like it's a whole country under the ground in America. The same they have in Russia, in China, in Israel, and in Norway, in Switzerland. Let's say you would say in Israel, okay, the excuse because we always in war we always under a nuclear threat. But in America, bunkers all over the states in America, many different states in America, in Switzerland, they're not in war. They're never under a nuclear threat. In Norway, in Sweden, there are bunkers. There are bunkers in Finland. In all over the Western world and also the Arab world. Now, it's all been covered. We know them. They started building them already 30 years ago, 20 years ago, with a huge amount of money, billions and trillions of dollars. Everything, where did they take the money? From the taxpayer. The taxpayer. Yeah. Anyway, the idea is when the deadline comes, when the 0 hour comes, actually before the actual 0 hour, because before the Nibiru makes the turn and we get into its tail, the closer it's come, they're going to be more and more dangerous hits. Right now, NASA said there are 4 huge asteroids that most likely will hit Earth. Did you hear about that? They said it's going to be coming on April 29. It's out there on the news.
That's a big one. I did write about that.
Yeah. Now, you never know. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's a false date. Maybe it's going to come a week before. They just want to keep us on a longer date. You never know. You can't trust them 100%. Everything they say, you have to take it, but not 100% as a solid truth. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So maybe this is the event of the Nibiru, or maybe one of his rocks before it's coming, actually. I don't know. Now, what we do know, and I said it all in my lectures over a few years ago, that before the actual deadline of the Nibiru, we're going to hear about a great event worldwide, like something like a catastrophe that would give them a reason to get into the bunker, like a world war or whatever, like a plague or whatever, that they would say, oh, we must get into our bunkers. But they're not getting into the bunkers because of a plague or the war, because of the Nibiru. But they need an excuse. How are they going to tell the residents? Because they always were hiding this plan. They're
Sure.
building it, then it's a top secret. They never told anybody about these bunkers. It's in case of a future war. But how they going to get excused that all of a sudden all the governments all over the world at the same time inside the bunkers, they need an excuse. They don't want people to rebel against them. They don't want people to go against the government because they're going to be in time of maybe a week or a few weeks, maybe a few months, that on the surface, there are no governments. Where are they? Guess where? Like rats running to their holes. So they need to make sure that people not going to take over the government. They're not going to rebel. You understand what I'm saying? So
yeah, because if they headed to the bunkers,
as soon as the corona,
if they headed to the bunkers and there was no reason, people would be like, "Where are you going?" So now, because of coronavirus, they can head to the bunkers, and people will be like, "Oh, I understand." And then all of a sudden,
when the coronavirus, when the coronavirus started to break out about a few months ago, in Israel there was nothing yet. It was only in China. Also in America there was nothing. Only in China. I told to my listeners, I have a hotline for religious Jews in Israel. We have over 20,000 listeners. Every week I give them a lecture with all what's going on in the world, and I connect it to the Parashat Shavua at the end of this topic. I told them, let's see, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the one we're waiting for. Maybe not. How are we going to check? How I'm going to check out this, if it's a setup or not a setup? Maybe it's really, really something, like a outbreak of a virus, like SARS, like the flus we had in the last century, Shapat HaChazirim, how they call it in English. I don't know, but anyway,
swine flu.
The swine flu, also the anthrax, AIDS. We had some flus. Of course, I have to emphasize that everything is from God. Everything that moves in this world, even a fly that moves in this world, it's been decided up in heaven. That not to get to any misunderstanding. Everything that you and I do, or Donald Trump does, or Bibi Netanyahu, whoever, it must have a permission from up in heaven. But why now we're talking about on the surface? How does it happen? I mean, even Paro, when he did all the shi'abud, all the
slavery,
all the trouble that he gave to Am Israel, slavery and everything in Egypt, it was decided first up in the court of God, of course, Beit Din Shemala. But Chazal tell us how he made it actually, slowly he took them to be slaves, and he did it in a tricky way. So we want to know how it works right now up here. But I just emphasize that it's all, up in heaven. They decided they're going to be the coronavirus. They decide who's going to die, who's going to get sick. Everything has been decided, first of all, up there. So anyway, let's get back down to earth. So when the coronavirus started, I said, let's see. If the media, usually, when things happen, when they want to silence things, the governments, and that's another thing, the New World Order, that's another lecture that I have it also on YouTube. You can look for it, how the Mashiach will take over the world from the New World Order. Anyway, everybody know the elite are controlling the world with their money. They're controlling the government. There's been many, many videos about that. Everybody's speaking about it. It's not a secret anymore. With their money, they got into the governments. They control everything. Some people, you can call it Freemasons, Illuminati, whatever. We're talking about the same agenda. So they control, one of the things that they control, by the way, is the UN. They invented the UN. Their agenda is to make the whole world united. One government, one language, one religion. Like who had the same agenda in the past? Who had the same agenda thousands of years ago? Nimrod, Migdal Bavel,
Right.
the Babylonian tower. One tower that will unite everybody. ותהי כל הארץ אחת דברים אחדים. They wanted to unite, but against God. If they want to unite under the law of God, that's good. That's what the Mashiach will do eventually. But they wanted to unite it under their own desires, against the laws of Hashem. And that's what they're doing right now exactly. Exactly. They want to have one government, one religion, one language, but not under the laws of Hashem. The laws that they provide according to their lusts and ideologies. Anyway, that's another lecture. I'm giving you many different lectures in the same thing, but we can't avoid them. The big picture is when the coronavirus outbroke, I said, let's wait and see if the media will make a big fuss out of it. Because when they do want to silence things, when they do want to keep things on a low profile, they don't put them on the headlines. Like many hits of meteors that cause fire and many things regarding the Nibiru. They said, oh, it's a conspiracy. They make fun out of it. I said, let's see what's going on with this outbreak. All of a sudden, after a week, I was shocked. All the media is speaking about it. The main media. The main media is in their hands. And all the governments in the world, instead of keeping things quiet, they said, oh, we're going to get to millions of casualties. Oh, we need to close everybody at home. We need to close this. I said, this is it. That's a setup. Soon they're going to tell that we are going to our bunker because of this coronavirus. I said it already a month ago. I said to my listeners, wait and see. That's it, a setup. I'm not saying there's not a virus out there. I'm not saying. But if you look at the numbers, it's ridiculous.
If there's
in America alone, wait. Yeah?
I just want to say, if there's one thing that we can say about the coronavirus, it's that we're not getting straight facts. No one knows anything. And that's the main thing. No one knows anything. And because we don't know anything, we don't know the real numbers of infections because there's no testing. You know, it could be that everyone has it right now. It's already all over the world. And because we don't know anything, someone who has power can do whatever they want. They could say, look, the coronavirus.
Exactly.
Because we don't know anything. I mean, that's the whole purpose of the media, is to give people the tools to make.
And what we do know, it's what we see, that they're making it a huge elephant from a fly, much more than what it is. Instead of coming down, they're destroying the business all over the world. The world is going into huge bankruptcy. If a government has a responsibility, they would do the other way around. They would do, keeping things calm and taking care of things. Instead, they close everybody at home, no flights, no hotels. The world is going into huge bankruptcy, and that's deliberate. It's deliberately. Why? I'm going to explain you. And as I told you before, what I'm telling you is very, very important. It's not a conspiracy. It's backed up not only with the facts, it's also backed up with the messages that we're getting from up there in heaven. All right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've never done this before. I never used messages and things from up in heaven. Usually I just use the facts. But we must use them because we're on a crucial point on the whole history of humankind. Now the last week, I started, people email me information that the richest people in the world are starting to get into bunkers because of the coronavirus. That's ridiculous. Every reporter right away would go to this billionaire like Bill Gates and tell, why do you go into bunkers because of coronavirus? And these are all over the world. You can check in the news. The richest people in the world are starting to get into their bunkers because of the coronavirus. And they take into the bunkers their family, the doctors, everybody's close to them. The logic thing would say, go to your private beach with a private mansion, close to anybody, nobody comes in.
Or even
Why to go underground like a rat?
Even rich people, they live in communities, they live in cities where what they call gated communities, where to get in, you need to go through a guard post.
They're isolated.
And they're isolated anyway.
That's it.
They have a house that's on this big piece of
Anyway.
land. So why don't you just stay there?
That's it. Why would they need to go in the bunkers? And it's all over the news. Go in the net and check.
Yeah.
Say, Richard, elite people going in underground. You're going to see it all over. Now they are, and that was 2 weeks ago. And last week, I spoke about it. 2 months when the corona just started, I told my audience, wait to the news that's saying that they're going into the bunkers. They're not going because of the corona. They're going because of the Nibiru, because of the asteroids. But they need an excuse. That's an excuse to go into bunkers that nobody would start asking questions. Now, last Thursday, Bibi Netanyahu said on the news, it was officially, that the Israeli government, is going into the bunker in Yerushalayim.
Yep.
Why? Because we have to find the coronavirus from the bunker. That's the biggest stupid things ever. And nobody asked him. Nobody just say the simple question that I'm asking. Why would you go into the bunker? Go into your mansion in Caesarea. Close up the old Caesarea.
It's not like
beach, beautiful, isolated.
It's not like he's going to the supermarket where he's going to bump into a bunch of people. In any case, he's isolated wherever he is. People, no one can go near him. So why a bunker? You know, I mean, he's isolated.
So that's it. That's a setup. A bunker, everybody knows it's supposed to guard you not from a virus, but from things that coming from up. Whether it's a rocket, whether it's a nuclear bomb, or an asteroid. You understand? Now I'm going to tell you what's going to be next. And these are together with the messages.
Before you go on, I just want to say about that to be honest, when you started explaining this to me, I kind of really, and this is going to sound a little political, I trust Donald Trump. He's not in a bunker. And he's out there meeting with people. I don't know if he's doing rallies anymore. But he's never.
Wait a week or two.
Maybe.
Be patient.
They're
going to do it gradually, my friend.
He's getting in trouble because he's telling. I kind of trust him because he's getting in trouble because he's saying, "Oh, it'll be over in 2 weeks. By Easter, we'll have everyone out." And people are like,
"Let me tell you something.
How can you say that?"
Let me tell you something. My friend, let me tell you something. It's not going to be over in 2 weeks, unfortunately. And it's not going to be over, not the next few months. Why? I tell you, because they need to keep us frightened and closed into their houses. When they say in the beginning, you cannot go be in crowd 5,000 people. I told my friends, this is bullshit. They're going towards the point that nobody would be allowed to go out of their house. Not only 5,000, not only 100, and not even 10. Now we can go in the synagogue. In a week or two, we're not going to be able to go in the synagogue, even one. They want to get to a point that nobody in the world is living in their houses. Why? Because if you go in Yerushalayim, and today I got one of my listeners left a message. He told me he was driving near the bunker, the big bunker in Yerushalayim. He said, I saw full of police, high officers all over in that area. Why? Because they want to make sure that nobody gets close and see what they're doing. If you go in the bunkers all over the world, now in America, in Norway, all over, you're going to see slowly, politicians, celebrities, elite people getting into the bunkers. That's what they're doing. That's why they're keeping everybody at home. Also, at the same time, by the way, I don't know if you're aware of that, there are a lot of people like technicians dealing with the with the with the street bulb. You know about the street bulbs?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
תאורת רחוב. You call it תאורת רחוב.
Street lights. Street lights.
Street lights, yeah. I don't know if you're aware of that. Inside those street lights, some of them, they have the G5. These are something that's also, you can check in the net. Many people talk about it. They have crews of technicians out on the street lights. What are they doing on the street light right now when you have the coronavirus? Nobody is allowed to go out of the house. And I get calls from many people.
No, but that's important. That's really important.
It's been happening all over the world.
That's the really important thing is the street lights right now.
Very important.
Because we're all going out at night.
The G5, that's it. Another thing, that's another thing they're doing. Why? Because when they go inside the bunkers, they need a control. They need to control us. How are they going to control us? They need to control you. One, with fear. Oh, the corona is getting bigger and bigger. People are scared to death. With fear, you can control people. Another thing is, everybody stay home connected to the internet. Everybody in the internet. That's how you're going to get everything. You want food through the net. You want to talk to each other through the net. The G5 is controlling the net. I don't know if you know that. Plus, they're putting there not only G5, but also cameras. If you know Yerushalayim, for example, Jerusalem, because it's a place of terror, so it's all over as it's netted with video cameras all over all the streets. They're doing it right now to the whole world. They want to control you while they're going to be there. They're going to be out in the bunkers, I don't know, it could be a month or two, up until the Nibiru is coming. From the moment the asteroid started going to hit, I guarantee you within a month or two, they're going to be a huge hit somewhere on the planet. Something they're not going to be able to hide it anymore, And the closer it gets to the deadline, they're going to be more and more of this hitting. And they must be in the bunkers. They don't want to take a chance. They, first of all, care about themselves. Now, I'll ask a big question, and I will give you an answer. How come you want to tell me all the governments all together in this camp? How come? Usually people have יש להם חילוקי דעות. How you say חילוקי דעות?
Differences of opinions.
Yeah, difference of opinion. חז"ל say, כשם שפרצופיהם שונים, דעותיהם שונים. All the people in the world, the same as their faces are different, also their opinion are different. You can't put people on the same idea, they will fight and sooner or later, right? So how come you, Yuval Ovadia, telling me they're getting together on this idea, on this coronavirus flop? How come? How come they're all on the same trick, right or not? The answer is, my friend, it's true. People cannot be united unless there's a threat from outside. Take any nation, like the Jewish people. They always have, machlokot. Always. Every nation. They have machlokot. They have, differences.
Disputes.
And these fights, disputes. But once there was a Holocaust, for example, all the Jews became together. Once we had the 6 Days War, everybody was united. When there's a threat from outside, everybody gets united. You know why? Because
do you think,
let's put aside now this dispute. We have an enemy.
Do you think this is all the governments? I mean, it seems like there's some governments that are on the outside and some governments on the inside. I mean, I can understand Israel and America working together. Iran very much seems like on the outside.
France, I tell you what, I think Iran must be inside. I'll tell you why. First of all, the information I received from up in heaven says that they're part of it. But I don't count on it alone, as I told you. I think logically. logically. Look at it this way. When, let's say, America and Israel, let's say they found a problem coming from outer space, and they know that at a certain point it's going to be coming and it's going to hit. And they know that soon before the strike of the Nibiru and the asteroids, they must be in the bunkers, right?
Mm.
And they, as we agreed and we understood right now, they must have a good excuse to get into it. Now, they must be together in this plan. You know why? Because if, for example, Iran become a crazy guy, and a year before he started World War, before the time that they need the World War to be, but right in the deadline, they're gonna go into a World War. It's a directed World War. It's an organized World War. They're gonna be a World War, not accidentally. They're planning to have a World War right before the Nibiru. A week before the Nibiru strike, they're gonna start a World War. Iran is gonna hit a nuclear on same country in America, and it's been planned. It's a setup. Why? Because they are afraid of the Nibiru, not of the World War. But they need to be in the bunkers all over, all of them. Now, if, for example, Iran or every of the מעצמות, a nuclear, איך אומרים מעצמה אטומית? מעצמה אטומית.
Nuclear power?
Yeah, a nuclear government. You know, that they have the nuclear ability. You know, France, England, Pakistan, they all have nuclear. China, all of them must be, at least all of those huge, big, influential countries, I mean, that
they have to be nuclear, they have to be in on it.
They must be in this. That's it. Why? Because if one government, for example, all of a sudden get crazy and push the button of the nuclear weapon, it's destroyed all the plans. הוא שובר את כל הכלים before time, before the time comes. They can't afford it. That's why in the last 20 years, they arrange with the money, with the setup to get all the right government under their belt. That's why, by the way, people know that Khomeini was a setup by America. You know, they caused Khomeini to come and take over Iran and to kill the Shah. It was a setup. Everybody knows that. They put their own people. If somebody doesn't go according to their plan, like Saddam Hussein was a crazy guy, so they arranged a war against Iraq. They took him off and they put a lolly puppet over there. If you go with them, fine. If you don't go with them, they're going to make an excuse, a war like Gaddafi, like Saddam Hussein, all people. If Iran is still a nuclear power, they must be together with them. You understand? But of course, they will keep the show going on. The Iran say, oh, we hate America, we hate this, we hate that. They must keep the show going on up until the final minute when they go under the ground. Under the ground, they're going to toast L'chaim. We're here. You understand?
Okay, Yuval.
It sounds like a conspiracy, but it must go this way if you think logically.
That's exactly what I wanted to say. First of all, I'm sorry. I think we should cut it off here, and we'll do another video talking about what we should do about it and what the end is going to look like. I don't want to give away all the secrets.
I haven't. Wait, hold on. We'll do it again, but I'll tell you what's ahead. Well, I have the information exactly what's going to be the steps one by one and how it's all designed by Hashem. Hashem let them play this game.
We shouldn't give that away yet. We'll do that in the next video. Okay, that's a preview.
All right.
Okay, I think it's and what I wanted to say is my dear friend Yuval. When you listen to him, you have to understand. First of all, I've been listening to him for several years, and it's coming together, and there are a lot of
and the FEMA camps.
And there are
What
real
about the FEMA camps that I've talked about it a long time ago? Now they start putting people in that,
and
in
there
the
are
facilities.
and
And
there are
they've
real
been building
questions.
them for 20 years ago.
There are real questions. If you're not convinced by the answers, then you have to ask the same questions. You have to ask, why are they doing this? Why are they going into bunkers? And if you can't get a good answer, well, you have to accept Yuval's answer. You have to find your own answer.
How come they have bunkers in Switzerland? How come they have bunkers in friendly countries that they don't have enemies? You have to ask these questions. How come the FEMA camps, for example, which contain like hundreds of thousands of people, supposedly, they're standing empty for 20 years in America? How come they've been prepared for that?
And
How come they knew? Well, they are the prophets.
How come we have every other epidemic that happened, we had hard, good data, hard, good numbers. This one we don't. Why don't we have any numbers? Why can't we hear?
That's it.
I've been listening to doctors and they're saying, look, they're not doing any testing. If you did testing, you would see that there will probably be a lot more people who have the coronavirus or have had the coronavirus, meaning that we're talking about a very small percentage of people who die from it. Everyone was like, oh, it's not as bad as the flu. What do you mean? Because the percentage of people dying, 3%? It's probably a lot lower than that. Anyway, we'll continue this discussion.
I'll give you another question.
Okay. One more question.
I'll give you another question for the audience to ask themselves. If you say it's all of a sudden and you know they can't control it, when the corona started to break out in America, how many people are in the first week that they started to close up everything? How many people got affected by the corona?
Right. Not so many.
100, 200?
Right.
All over America, 50 states, and they started to close up things. And how many people are being affected by regular flu in America yearly? You know how many? I've checked. Every year, between 25 to 45 million Americans are being affected by a regular flu every year. And how many dead? How many casualties from that flus?
Just to give you a number, yes, the USA is now the number one number of cases. Okay? But the total number of cases per million people is 351 cases per million people. And the total deaths per million people is 6 people per million. And that's in America. Anyway, Yuval, I'd like
to know how many died. You know how many died from a flu in America on 2019? How many died from a flu in America in 2019? You know how many?
No.
60,000 people. They didn't close anybody. Yeah, died.
Right.
Contagious were like 45 million. And nobody was closed. Nothing was closed. The airport wasn't closed. Nothing. Business was as usual. Right. So how come now it's different?
Okay.
Many questions I can give you.
These are the questions we'll be talking about in the future, in the next meeting, with some of the answers. In any case, Yuval, I'd like to thank you so much. Stay on the line for just a minute. Okay.